I'll be the host for today because Dr. Shealy and Dr. Sorin are on a much needed break this week, so they will be rejoining us next week. Today we have an amazing guest. His story is incredible. Everyone should hear it. His name is Michael Maples, and I am going to let Michael, you go ahead and introduce yourself and just give us a little piece of who you are before we dive in.
I'm not that interesting, but I appreciate you saying it like that, Rachel.
Well, I disagree.
So that's fine. Michael Maples. I'm from Missouri originally, and I think Dr. Shealy either did or was in Fairgrove, Missouri. I think for a while.
He was.
Funny thing is, I grew up in Fair. I live in Nashville now, but I grew up in Fairgrove,
Small world.
and that institute was like on this little back road near where I grew up, and we always thought he was like this mystical creature. Back there, it's like that's. And one time, a friend of mine for a report, I think it was actually in college, got an interview with him, and I remember we were just like, you're going to talk to the mystical creature, and so anyway, it's
awesome.
been yeah, it's funny. It's been a long distance and long time since then, but now we're in Nashville, so.
Well, now it's all full circle. Here you are back connecting with the Dr. Shealy tribe.
The mystical Dr. Shealy. So,
Yeah.
Thanks for having me here.
Of course, we're so happy to have you on. Tell us just a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get really into your history.
So, I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm what they call late onset, which I was diagnosed when I was 32 years old. But then, I contend that it wasn't late onset because there were symptoms going back deep into my childhood, diabetic symptoms that when you grow up in a town like Fairgrove, you don't really go to the doctor for everything. If you're not feeling good or you're acting up, then your parents kind of trying to figure it out. When I was a kid, my mom self-diagnosed me as allergic to chocolate. So we didn't really have sugar in the house. The only sugar we had was chocolate. And when I had chocolate, I would just go spastic. And she'd make me go out and run around the house 20 times, and that was that's how we medicated the chocolate allergy.
The spastic.
The spastic.
Chocolate allergy. Well, okay,
Yeah.
So I want to talk about that before we jump into your story, so our listeners have a little bit of a background, just kind of about the insulin glucose connection and
Sure.
why that kind of worked for what your mom had you do. If we can pull up that second slide. Yeah, let's go. Okay.
Is my video stuck on everybody else's? It looks like it. There's that just.
No, we're good on our end.
Okay, just making sure. All right, carry on.
We're good. So yeah.
All right.
So the way that insulin and glucose work together, just so that our listeners have a real quick idea, is when your blood glucose or blood sugar, those words are used interchangeably, gets really high, that's very dangerous to the rest of your systems. And so what we need is our cells to pull the glucose in so they can utilize them, kind of burn that glucose for fuel. But we can't really do that unless we have this insulin that kind of goes in and unlocks that channel that allows the glucose in. So if we go to the next slide, you can see how if you're like a type 1, your pancreas is not producing insulin. A healthy pancreas will make that insulin that will go unlock the cell and pull the sugar out of the blood and into the cell. And I put something on here with type 2 because I want people to know that a lot of the things that you were doing can help all kinds. And also, let me be really, really clear. We're not telling a type 1 to go stop using their insulin. Okay, we're just giving you one man's story and kind of what happened with all of this. So if you're type 2, what can often happen is you will have high blood sugar due to diet, lack of exercise, those types of things. And your pancreas will make lots and lots of insulin. But at some point, when the cell's full and it can't pull that glucose in, your pancreas will get really fatigued and quit producing insulin. So this is why some type 2 diabetics have to take insulin, and this is why some don't. It kind of depends on the stage of where they are. So my last little slide is just a picture of a pancreas that's a type 2 diabetic pancreas that's really tired because it's been working very hard. But in your case, your pancreas was not producing insulin.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just wanted to hop in. One really small detail is one of the ways you can pull glucose out of your blood and put it into those muscle cells and those other cells without using insulin is exercise. And so this makes a lot of sense why your mom would have said, go outside and run around.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. There's a.
Okay.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, so that was just the start of it, because that's 20 years before diagnosis came.
Right.
I'm going to run through real quick high school through my
Good.
20s,
Perfect. Yeah.
what I did, and then we'll lead up to diagnosis, and then we'll talk about how that
Cool.
came full circle to kind of give us the answers of what to do. High school hit. I was a great athlete. Junior high, great. High school hit. Was real scrawny, real tired. Couldn't get anything done. Real scrawny till my junior year. A good friend of mine introduced me to exercise in the just exercise in general. And all of a sudden, in a matter of 2.5 months, I gained 25 pounds, and I perked up and really came into my own. Skip ahead. I was full-time college student during high school. Graduated college just right out of high school, and I was working production there in Springfield, Missouri at KSPR. I was doing television production, and then I skipped on. I'm 19 years old at this time. Skipped on, and I was doing live broadcasts for the Kansas City Royals, actually, Royal Sports Television Network, Kansas City, and I was feeling terrible because I just got out of high school, which I was doing sports. And now all of a sudden I'm sitting on this truck working production full time, sitting still, and I felt terrible. And I just quit. Everything, I was like, I must just really hate this. So I quit, but I knew I felt good when I exercised. I was like, well, exercise feels good to me, but sitting here doesn't feel good to me. I can't even think sitting here. So I'm going to go back to school for exercise because I like that. I didn't know that it was actually a health thing. I thought everybody felt like that because I was just used to feeling that way.
Right. That was the only way you knew.
That's right. So I go back to school, exercise. I'm turning 20 at this time, and I become personal trainer like everybody did or everybody wanted to back in 2004 or 5, and did really good. I was feeling good again, feeling great. I was living in Branson,
Didn't
Missouri.
you have your own gym there you were running?
That's it. When I was 21, I opened my first gym. 21. I mean, I was just feeling good.
Yeah, you were on
And
fire.
I was, yeah, and I was excited, and I thought everybody felt terrible when they weren't exercising hard. And so that probably is what fueled my passion for the success is when I was telling people look, you got to get into this. I was believing that they just hated life. And so the passion that came out of that was them, it just did really good. And the gym grew. All of a sudden I'm, 22 years old. The gym's 24 hours a day. It's growing. We got a fight club in it. All this stuff. I'm 22 years old. I don't even know. Nobody in my family's ever owned their own business at that point. And so it's good. So all throughout my 20s was good, except for a couple times. In 2006, I had gotten out of when I was getting ready to open the gym. Actually, I was already doing the personal training thing, and I went and was for one winter was doing the paperwork to get this gym started, and so I stopped everything else. I started feeling really sick again, kind of like I did when I was in that TV truck, but I couldn't figure it out. But didn't know what was going on. I went in for medical testing. I was like, look, doctor, I'm lethargic. I don't feel good. He's like, well, you look healthy, because I did. I looked healthy. And he says, I think it's just, you got a lot of stress right now. Stress, anxiety, and depression. And I was like, I don't know. Okay. He's like, well, you get back to your exercising. Get back to, what you were doing and see how that helps. Okay. So I did. Fine again, right? And then
so you returned to the exercise and all the symptoms essentially went away.
Yeah. But now it wasn't just exercise. I was doing intense stuff. I felt good at long distances. Running, biking.
Burning up a lot of glucose.
Yes, but more importantly, what I was doing was really tapping into burning a lot of fat. And that later becomes the key for it because, your body literally burns. There's two major nutrients your body is going to burn, which is going to be either glucose or it's going to be a fat, and then a mixture somewhere in the two of those. But
let me back up for our listeners, just because we are saying glucose or fat. Carbohydrates are what end up being glucose, just so people know. Carbs and
That's
fat,
right.
glucose and fat, just, keep going.
Yeah, so we'll say that a lot. Glucose, sugar, carbohydrates. We're going to intermix
There you
those
go.
a lot.
There you go.
Glucose, sugar, and carbohydrates. So then 2010 hits, had a real stressful winter, had death in the family. Then Christmas, I went on a trip with friends, and then I got pneumonia. So all of a sudden, I'm out of exercise again for 2 months. And by the spring of 2010, same thing. I wasn't getting up and like going to the gym. I was just paying employees. I wasn't showing up. I didn't feel like it. I was staying in bed. They were doing brain scans on me. I couldn't sleep at night. I switched bedrooms in my house. Maybe I just don't like this bedroom. I was searching everything. I mean, it was crazy.
Yeah, wow.
And they even did it, like I had a friend who was a radiologist, and he's like, well, let's do brain scan. Let's see if we can find something. And nobody ever pricked my finger. And I think, like I said, growing up in Fairgrove, we did. We just didn't go to the doctor, and you just dealt with it. And so I literally, when you would break your arm, you'd go to the vet growing up to get it x-rayed. Like that's what.
Well,
Yeah.
okay. I spent a childhood in Pleasant Hope, but I don't ever remember, which is pretty close to Fairgrove. That was never a thing.
Yeah. So that was.
Okay.
That's the way we did. Literally, you break your arm on Friday night at the football game. You go to the veterinarian before you go spend the money at the ER. Anyway, so 2010 it was like that, and it was the same answer. It was you got stress, anxiety, and depression. Like that's you just depressed. You had a rough.
And did you ever feel like that was the answer, or did you know kind of like that was not it?
Something wasn't right.
So
That's all I knew.
Okay.
That's all I knew. And so at that point I was just focusing on what I could do, which was I couldn't sit there for very many days like this at an office or whatever, but I can run as far as you want to. Literally we can take off today and run till tomorrow if you want. And that's where I felt the best, which is wild. We'll talk about the boat race here in a bit. I think you got that on your.
Yeah, I thought that would be really interesting for our listeners. Mm-hmm.
So at that point, and that was 2010. It was the fall of 2010 that boat race that I did, and my body perked back to life, and that's when I knew something was seriously different. So that's 2010. At that point, I'm 25 years old, turning 26. Still running the gym, kind of.
And let's go back to the boat race, because didn't you kind of have like a I don't want to call it an epiphany because that's not the right word, but you started feeling good during that race when everyone else was kind of done.
That's it. So we were doing this this Guinness Book of World Records attempt, and it was the longest distance ever traveled in a dragon boat. Most people don't know what a dragon boat is, but they also do know what it is. They just didn't know. It's those big, long Viking Chinese looking canoe things. They got the dragon heads on the end, and you got like 20 guys and you're paddling. And so somebody got the wild idea, like, hey, let's do the Guinness Book of World Records. And I wasn't even on the team. We did Missouri River from Kansas City to St. Louis. It was a 340-mile trek without stopping. The old record was 82 miles, I think, and we were going to do 340, so we were going to knock this thing out. Yeah. And I didn't know what a dragon boat was, but I get a call from a friend in Branson. He says he knew I just liked long distance stuff. He knew I was a freak about just like going and never stopping. And he says, "Hey, we got a spot open on this dragon boat race. Will you come and do it?" And I was like, "I don't know how to do this thing, any of it, and he says, well, I'll teach you on the fly, but he's like, what I need isn't somebody who knows how to paddle well. I need somebody who knows how to not quit, Okay, I got you. I won't quit. So they take me to Kansas City, stick me in this boat, and we do the warm-up run, and it was like, I felt terrible. I was like, I don't want to do this, but I can't quit. So next morning hits. It's time for the race. We take off, and it took us 38 hours, which is actually really good pace. It's like 9 mile an hour pace the whole race, or something.
Right.
I mean, the
I
river,
don't have a lot of perspective on that, but that
yeah.
is very good. Yeah.
Now the river's going like 4 miles an hour or
So
whatever.
that adds to it. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was 340 miles, took us 38 hours, but you start like, after a while, your body starts to give out, right? Nobody paddles or runs or bikes for 38 hours. But for me, it was about an hour 30 to 35, and everybody is dragging. Everybody is dragging, and I got the second wind. And literally, we're
Uh-oh. Where did he go? Oh, there he is. Technical difficulties.
I don't know. Anyway, it's about 32 hours. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we lost you for a second there. It's okay. So you got the second wind at 30.
Yeah, 32 hours.
32. Okay.
And everybody's like just kind of flailing. It's hot outside. We've been in this boat for a long time. Everybody's energy's dead, and I'm like, I feel euphoric, alive, sort of thing. First real energy I've had in a long time, and I start like doing this chant thing, and the teammates will tell you, just chant thing for hours. Just like counting off all of our strokes to get us through, and we cruise through the finish line, and where I should have been dying, I was feeling great. And so that was after the diabetes diagnosis came, and after a couple years, I looked back on that and I was like, what was going on then that we can apply now? What do we know about physiology, metabolic pathways? That's what's happening deep into ultra endurance exercise that I can apply to the diabetes. So that was like, looking back, that was the real first epiphany that, like, wait a minute, there's a pathway here. And I've been there before.
First kind of when you started looking at like the fat burning piece of things, is that kind of where that?
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay.
Because
and we have a picture. Because did you end up setting the record?
We did set the record. Do you have the picture from the?
A picture of I think right after you guys had been So,
sorry, that's a different race.
Oh, that's
me and
so
my dog.
funny. I was just.
That's me with hives eating sugar.
Okay,
and that's me with hives.
That picture then.
I don't have the dragon boat picture.
Okay,
I should have got it for you. I'm so sorry.
No, that's all right. Hey, the world knows you guys won or
Yeah.
set the record. That's really cool. So,
Yeah, and so just the odds that happened were really very minute odds that I could get there and give it, because there are no studies. There are no scientific studies on what happens in the metabolic pathways of somebody after 38 hours of exercise.
Right, there's not a lot of volunteers for that.
Yeah, and definitely not on a type 1 diabetic at 38 hours. So I got some insight that nobody else would have gotten. And there are a lot of elements leading up to when we get to diabetes. So at that point, I'm 26 years old, and I stay good in exercise for the rest of it. Right after that, I went to Colorado for a while, and a friend of mine who opened up this great wellness clinic there, his name's Dr. Scott Gam. And Scott, he's a chiropractor, but he's a wellness chiropractor. And he's the first one who introduced me to a lot of things that I would also come to know. And so about diet and exercise and balancing pH levels in my bloodstream, which is really important to diabetic, because you hear about diabetic ketoacidosis. Well, all that is like a major imbalance of the of your pH levels due to the acid caused by ketones in the blood.
Right.
So
ketones and the glucose. And,
yeah. And so I stayed with exercise. Didn't get back out of it. Kept doing these long distance things because I felt good. We did more races. The longest I've paddled now is like 56 hours without stopping. Like that. So we continued on doing that. And then I got married when I was 30. And my wife travels. She's a singer. She travels all over the place for music, nonstop. And so I was traveling with her. Now, once again, a little bit out of exercise. Wasn't feeling as good. Still don't know I'm type 1 diabetic. Not feeling good. We have to move to Las Vegas. She's working residency there. We moved to Las Vegas, and like I'm an imbecile during this time. Like I am just sleeping, and I don't feel good. And we think it's just I'm out of my routine, and now I'm stressed, anxiety, depression again.
Right.
And we're trying to figure it out. And I'm like, yeah, I'm hurting. but don't really know it. I think it's just, the
Right.
emotional stress. So then we moved to Nashville. During that time, bought a farm in Nashville. We moved to Nashville. I got to renovate it. And now this is when the weight loss starts, because now I've been out of exercise longer than I've been since my junior year in high school, when I told you when I got healthy all of a sudden. Okay. Now I'm dropping weight quickly. And I go from 200, a healthy 210 pounds, really healthy 200, which is what I am right now, to 172, I think was my lowest.
Okay. Yeah, so that's a substantial. Yeah.
And I'm feeling the same thing as 2006, 2010, where, okay, stress, anxiety, depression, all of a sudden I got this major weight on my shoulders to get this renovation done, this house. It's all I'm doing. It's all I'm thinking about. I'm not eating right. I'm sucking down Coca-Cola because I think that, the sugar and the caffeine and the Coke is going to like boost me. And it was giving me this little temporary boost. The Coca-Cola was, one, the caffeine, two, your brain can process glucose. It's the only organ in the body that can process glucose without insulin. It's your brain. And so it was this heightened sense, but still physically struggling. But getting worse. And then one day that summer, I feel like I have kidney stones.
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, my kidneys really hurt. I really hurt. And I think I got kidney stones. So I go to the ER, and I tell the ER nurse, I was like, I think I got these kidney stones. My kidneys just hurt terribly, just so bad. And she's like, okay, I don't know. She's being real calm. And then finally, somebody pricks my finger.
So she was how old were you? 32?
32.
Okay. And this is the first time someone had checked your blood glucose.
Like that, yeah. She pricks my finger, and then all of a sudden she says, oh. And she starts running around, and she gets other people, and she's like, are you okay? Do you feel okay? And I'm like, I feel like lethargic, which has been a symptom intermittently throughout my life. I said, yeah, I feel okay. I feel like I got kidney stones, but I feel like I always do. I feel like I got kidney stones. And she's like, you're about to die. And then they, all this stuff. Next thing you know, I'm on the gurney, and they're like, you're type 1, you're diabetic in the worst way. And
yeah, I mean, what was your glucose when she saw the number? What was it?
I don't know, it was like close to 1,000, I think, or something.
So
it was like
ridiculously high, because
yeah.
I mean, a healthy person, like, I mean, I like for weight loss it to be 80 to 120, but I mean, even if it's under 150, we're not freaking out or anything.
Right.
So, like, close to 1,000 is insane.
Yeah. I think they call, like a 90 to 100 is like really great in the average individual. It fluctuates, like you said. And then the medical system starts calling 110 or 115. They start calling that, if you're average.
For fasting glucose.
They call that pre-diabetes.
Mm-hmm.
And so then 10 times that amount is not good. And my A1C, I think the monitor that they use goes to like 14 to measure A1C. That's
right. That's your average.
And we don't really know what my A1C was, because it was
above 14.
It was above the monitor. I do know that.
Okay, and just so people know, if it's 6.5, you're considered like a type 2 diabetic. So you are
yeah.
You are ridiculous. Yeah, off the charts. Okay.
Anyway, so that was that. Now I'm a diabetic. Got it. So then they send me down this pathway of taking 2 kinds of insulin, and any diabetics out there will understand. 2 kinds of insulin. You've got this long-lasting insulin, and then you've got this short. The long-lasting is to mimic like the little bit that your body will secrete into your blood throughout the day, throughout the night, and then the short term is like when you eat a big meal. Then you would hit this short-term insulin. And I became a loser. Now, I'm not saying that people take insulin a loser, because I actually now, and we'll get to 2019 to 2020, I went full year and a half without 1 shot of insulin. But now I do it intermittently, which we'll get into. So I'm not knocking the use of insulin. In fact, don't stop taking insulin. Don't do it. Like,
right. We're not by any means saying just quit cold turkey or anything like that. We're talking about how you were able to figure
That's
out
it.
how you
Thank
could
you.
live without it, but it's a very intense lifestyle.
Very intense. Very intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I just felt terrible, and I wasn't nice. Was kind of angry, a lot, moody. I just wasn't used to it. I wasn't. I don't think my body had been burning sugar for a very, very, very long time. I think I'd gotten really good at burning fat, and now you're introducing this hormone into me that I don't recognize, which is insulin. And not only was I taking the insulin, now I'm actually like, they say you use insulin to balance your sugar. Well, I feel like most of diabetes and a lot of diabetics can relate to this, is actually you're using sugar to balance your insulin because your insulin drives you down. So then you eat more sugar. So then you shoot more insulin, and then that drives you down. Then you eat more sugar, and it becomes this vicious cycle, and it's really hard to get out of. So that was 2 years of my life. 2 years.
And so I guess in what happened that you decided that you wanted to try to reduce the amount of insulin you were taking, or that the insulin was the problem?
That's it. So the goal was to reduce. The goal was to reduce the amount of insulin. That was like, maybe I'll feel better if I don't have to take as much. If I'm not eating as much glucose, I don't have to take as much. Is the goal. And there's something that they don't teach you when you become a diabetic. They don't teach you about the glucose that your body makes.
Oh, so for the lay person, the glucose that your body makes, you might refer to it as endogenous glucose.
Endogenous glucose. Yeah, there's a couple ways to get it. One is through glycogen, which is a lot of sugars that you will store in your cells.
Yep.
Or in your liver. And then when you need energy and you don't have food to eat, well, that glycogen starts pouring out of your muscles and it starts pouring out of your liver. And so that's when if you're diabetic and you're like wondering, well, I haven't eaten for 10 hours, why is my blood sugar rising? Or I exercised, why is my blood sugar rising? It's because your body is either releasing that glycogen or it's making its own through a process called gluconeogenesis, which is where you'll actually start eating you'll start pulling out of your muscle tissue or using proteins that you've eaten.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, use proteins to create
the sugar. So yeah, so there's that. They don't teach you about that. They only teach you about intake. And so, any case, I read this study. You asked the question, what made me decide that I could maybe lower this. So I read this study, came out of the UK, which I think I shared with you, but they deleted.
I never got the study. I need you should email that to me.
I will. It's when we first talked back in.
Okay, yeah, and I didn't. Okay, but anyway, yeah.
I'll do it again. So interesting thing is that article got deleted, but I took screenshots of it. Go figure. And it definitely.
I remember talking about that.
And it definitely wasn't released from the United States. It was, it was released from we won't talk about conspiracies when it comes to insulin and big pharma, but it came out of the UK. And it was about a high presence of insulin in your system inhibits or prohibits your body from burning fat effectively. And I thought, wait a minute. And this is for my years in the exercise. See, I remember I just had a whole career in exercise.
Oh, right. Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute. There's only two sources of energy my body can really use. Carbohydrates or sugars or glucose. Carbohydrates or fat.
Right. And let me just back up and say, if your body's using proteins, then it's a problem. So your body can use protein, but you do not want it to do that. So yeah, go ahead.
Essentially, if your bodies are using proteins, it's making the protein into carbohydrates or sugar.
You're right. It goes back to the gluconeogenesis.
So that's it. So she's right. Yeah. So if you definitely don't want to use your proteins because it just turns proteins into sugar. So your body's got sugar and it's got fats mainly. And I was like, wait a minute, my insulin is stopping me from burning fat. Is that true? And I've got a lot of insulin in my system because I'm shooting this long-lasting stuff. It's what's always present, ever present in my system. Then I'm shooting this short-term stuff. And then it's forcing storage of glucose into my cells in my liver. And then when I eat, my glucose goes up, so I shoot more insulin to block the sugar, and this vicious cycle. And I was like, and the insulin is stopping me from burning fat. My whole life, I'll contend to the day I die, that I've been, whether or not the diabetes progressed, that could have, because your type 1 can like start, like type 1A, type whatever, and then it becomes your pancreas is actually like, it's not working at all.
It's done. Yeah.
But I'll contend, and I'll always contend that my whole life, I have not been using glucose as a great source of energy because my body couldn't. And it became really proficient at burning fat. This is why, like in that dragon boat race, 30 hours in, we're like, I'm cruising while everybody's dying, is because I was burning fat. And so anyway, that article, and I was like, well, I want to burn fat. I want to maximize this fat burning. So I need to find a way to decrease the amount of insulin in my system because I don't want the insulin to stop me from burning fat.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I'm going to MCT. Somebody introduced me to MCT oils, which got really popular in 2000.
They did get really popular. For people that don't know, that's the medium chain triglyceride, so they're very easily absorbed in the intestinal tract.
That was it. And so somebody had introduced me to that, and I started doing exercise about what I know about burning fat, which is American Heart Association. Minimum 30 minutes, to fight obesity, minimum 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. And then the deeper you get into it, the more you hear stuff about your heart rate. Like you need to keep your heart rate between 60 and 80 of your heart rate
your
max.
heart
And
rate. Mm-hmm.
all of the, and you know what? All that's true. Like that is the basis of fat burning is that. And there's so much more, if you want to get better at burning fat as energy, you would do more things, but at the very minimum that. And so I begin to get into what I knew about that. And then I get into the glycogen stores. So as a diabetic, if you go out and just simply exercise, a lot of diabetics see their blood sugar go straight up. And so I started with that. It's like, okay, my blood sugar's going straight up. And I knew about glycogen stores. In ultra endurance exercise, that's like first thing they teach you. And
yeah,
then
they tell you to load up on
Yes.
the stores. Yeah.
And so then it's like we need to somehow deplete the glycogen because I've got a massive store because my body's not good at burning sugar, but I've been using this insulin and I've been packing away glucose.
Yeah,
you've
probably reached max capacity.
Sure, whatever that. And so then I installed fasting. What I knew about fasting into the system, and
into
they
your
say,
routine.
yeah, because they say that fasting, intermittent fasting has gotten really popular in the last few years, and as like, I don't know who came up with it, but I was blaming it on Americans. As Americans, we think we invented everything. It's what I went to South Africa one time to tour with this guy, and he's like, "You Americans, you guys think you just invented everything."
We didn't invent intermittent fasting. It's probably been around since the dawn of time.
I'm proud to be an American, but the reality is we often do think that like so this, or it's like organic food. Like we didn't invent organic food. That was the way it. That's the way it is.
That's how it's supposed to be. Yeah. Which kind of goes back to fasting. Every religion across the world
it.
has something about fasting. Yeah.
That's it. And so I dug deep back into the Bible, Old Testament stuff, and talk about like fasting and whatever. So I really applied that and I actually don't like talking about it very much, the fasting part of it. And there's a good reason for that. And the Bible's like real clear on, it's like when you're fasting, don't like walk into work basically and be like, oh, I'm fasting and life's so hard. It's like you carry yourself. It commands like carry yourself, keep it a secret, and fast that way. And there's a lot of benefits that I don't know what they are to that, but there are some that I do know. And if I do something for attention,
right, it's for all the wrong reasons.
And it
Yeah.
actually stimulates my metabolism in a different way. If it stimulates excitement because I got attention,
Oh, right.
think about
Yeah.
it. Now,
Yeah.
now my metabolism is working differently. But if I'm able to carry through something like that, where I'm able to stay level, stay even kill, keep it quiet, deep conversations with God during that time, it actually changed the way I metabolized. I would get rid of that glycogen storage. Did that, boom. Was
Okay.
eating the
I'm sure
fats.
listeners want to know, how long were you fasting for?
I would do a 24-hour fast.
Okay, so you do a full 24 hours.
Full 24. I would do basically dinner to dinner.
So it's a little more intense than intermittent fasting, but
Right, which, yeah.
yeah.
So-
Yeah. I mean, they all have their benefits, just different
Sure.
ways and things. So, okay. Yeah.
I chose that as the best. There's a few reasons why I chose that as the time of the day. One, there's a lot of ancient documentation that they would fast until sundown the next day. That was a good thing. So
Gotcha.
that was for the things I don't understand. But for the things I do understand, is it's easier to be hungry while I'm asleep than it is
That
while
is
I'm
also
awake.
true. 100%.
And, yeah. And then there's another thing I wanted to control, and diabetics know about this. It's called the dawn effect. The dawn effect is where you've been fasting, you haven't eaten anything all night long. And then you wake up in the morning and your blood sugar mysteriously starts to rise.
Yeah. A lot of type 2s see that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My wife just went through gestational diabetes, and which is
Oh, okay.
similar to type 2, and it's the same thing. The dawn effect was just like, and the best I could find on the dawn effect was, it's a very primitive sort of thing. Let's say you're like a, whatever BC caveman, and you wake up and you've got no food. The only way you're going to survive is if you can get food. But if you don't have the energy to go get that food,
Right.
then your body starts to make the energy to get you there.
Right. So it's a hormonal response to start releasing all that
it.
glucose into your blood and kind of get you fueled.
Yeah,
Even though
and
you technically don't need it. Your body doesn't know that.
exactly. So I had to teach the body that we don't need that. It's a reaction to either patterns, which is that we wake up and we get going in life, or actually a pattern to fear, maybe even a subconscious fear that okay, it's day and I've got to get some stuff done, and how am I going to do this? Well, the body's like, I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
So the fasting thing was, the goal was that, okay, I need to stop, because if I'm going to reduce the amount of insulin I take, I need to reduce my glucose, right? It needs to be lower. So I would make sure I went to bed, clear my mind comfortably, be thankful for everything I've got, and wake up not afraid.
So gratitude, I'm hearing, was really important
Big
part
time.
of it.
Big time.
Sounds kind of like trust, because the not afraid.
Faith.
Yeah,
That's it.
okay.
Not afraid, thankful, faith. And so that was a big thing in getting in keeping, definitely the dawn effect, but definitely stopping all of endogenous production.
So I have a question for you on that. So
Yeah.
once you implemented the 24-hour fasting, how long was it until you saw the dawn effect kind of subside?
A couple weeks, 3 weeks.
So that's, yeah, I'm just, and everyone's
Yeah.
going to be different anyway, but it's just kind of like, was it a couple of weeks or a couple of months or so? Okay. So it happened relatively quickly.
Yeah, really. But I mean, there isn't. I couldn't tell you what it would be like in somebody else necessarily,
Sure.
because
Everyone's so different.
I have all the years of the endurance exercise where my body's
That's
used
also-
to burning fat, and so it's like,
That's true.
okay, it's not a. But it might. I'd be interested. I would be interested to know if safely somebody would do it or could do it. So, and there was no insulin present in my system, and so that's where the first time that I didn't have insulin present.
Okay. So it was after you had implemented, I mean, you were doing the
It was when.
exercising.
It was when I implemented, because if I if I had insulin in my system and I didn't eat, it would drive me low,
Oh,
right?
right.
Because the insulin,
Yeah. Too
and
much.
then, and definitely would trigger endogenous production because the body's like, we've got insulin present, but we're not finding glucose. We need to make some. So
Gotcha.
I cut that insulin, went to bed with a low blood glucose number, and fasted for the next 24 hours. And woke up and went through the whole bit, gratitude, thankful, I'm not afraid. Basically, like everything listed out. And I'm sitting on my dining room table. This is after my grandpa died. It was real tough on me. This was the Bible he read every day, and he marked what days he read. And so I would read along with him because the dates were marked in there.
That's so neat. Oh, wow.
And after you just read along with them morning after morning, you begin to memorize stuff. But all of the stuff about, like, don't be afraid, and faith, and be anxious for nothing, all things, like, prayer, supplication. It's all about. It's basically saying, like, chill,
Yeah.
be thankful,
Right.
be thankful, and just like trust and be okay. And so that's
kind of tie that back a little bit to Dr. Shealy. He has every thought is a prayer. That's, yeah.
And so literally that's what I believe strongly, that's what stopped my endogenous production from raising my blood glucose. And so if my blood glucose is flat, and we have some slides we'll show, if my blood glucose is flat and it's not rising, well, if your blood glucose is low, you don't need insulin, do you? Because that's when you take insulin, is when your blood glucose gets high. And so my blood glucose stayed flat. It stayed flat, so I don't shoot insulin if I don't need it. Well, 2 days goes by. Well, I still don't need it. 3 days goes by. So this was a typical day. If you have anybody who's got a continuous glucose monitor would know what this means. This is the Dexcom.
Yeah.
And it's my continuous glucose monitor. And this represents a 24-hour period. This was an average 24-hour period for me in 2019 to the middle of 2020. So
this is when you had figured out all the steps for you that worked.
Yes, for me.
Insulin.
That's it. So the pink lines that would be like in the low area. Okay. And then there's a little white line, and they would call that, like, I think that's like 90 or 100 milligrams per deciliter of blood glucose, I think is where the white line is at. And then right above that is where I'm at. And that's a diabetic would love to hang out there for all day long. Would love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can see at 6 a.m. or a little before it, I wake up, I've been asleep all night, and my blood glucose is just sailing smooth. So I get up, I do my stuff, I read my Bible, I take maybe some emails and some phone calls for work. And then this is actually a late day for me for exercise, but along about 10 a.m. or so, you'll see it rises. So my morning diet, I would eat blueberries mixed with MCT oil.
So that was your fuel. And so blueberries are going to have a little tiny bit of glucose. So is that
Yes.
so you're getting the exogenous outside source?
Yes. So that's exactly right. Because there's two reasons, like, I came up with that. I thought, well, I'm going to need this glucose. One is like I said earlier, the brain is the only organ that can process glucose without insulin. Mm-hmm. And so a little bit of thinking power. Number two is to stop. Remember, I talked about, like, that primitive caveman. He wakes up and he doesn't have his body doesn't think he's going to get to eat at all. And so then it starts this mechanism. Now look right before the big hump. Mm-hmm. You see between like 6 a.m. and what would be 11 a.m., you see like this slow, gradual rise.
Yeah,
see it?
Like you can see it's trending up.
It's starting to trend up. And so what I needed to do was I needed to just let my body know, like, hey, here's a little bit of glucose. It's going to be okay. We got food. We're not hurting here. And then right after that, I would let it rise, which is still like the top point there is like 190 which is
Yeah, it's hard for us to see on that, but yeah.
yeah, because I don't have that part of the chart on there, but that's like 190, and then as soon as it would like begin to flatten out, that's when I'd start my exercise. I start right there.
Oh, okay. So a big part of this too was like very specific timing, like you
Very
had a whole
specific timing.
system down.
Yeah, and because we're trying to avoid endogenous glucose, which we'll define it again. Endogenous glucose is your body either releasing stored glucose or making its own glucose from proteins, and that was the key to controlling my diabetes. It still is, even though I use a very small amount of insulin now. The goal is to control the release of unwanted sugars into the blood.
And it's just so fascinating when you say all this and you kind of look at it and it's like, so you're telling your brain and your spiritual side, like, don't be afraid, and then you're feeding that information to your body as well, like, hey, it's okay, I've got you, you don't need to stress out.
The body is
creating this, you're all right.
That's it.
Yeah,
when you go to the doctor, it's easy. It's not the doctor's fault, maybe in some cases, but you leave feeling stupid. You leave like your body is. You feel like your body is a
like
failure.
You can't trust your body,
and your body is stupid. And there's something else that I told you about this wellness doctor that I work for, Dr. Scott Gamm. He said that and I think it was a B.J. Palmer quote, and he said that the power that makes the body, or that made the body, has the power to heal the body. And so it's like when you leave feeling stupid, like you don't know how to eat, you don't know how to use your medicine, you don't know how to whatever. Remember that you might have a failing organ in your body, but your body is not stupid. It is so smart. And I'll use, if you don't mind, I'll use an example. We just had our first baby 2 days ago.
Yeah, yes, congratulations. They got their new parents, new father.
Thank you. He's it's cool. His name's Velzy Monroe Maples. And people are like, Velzy, never heard that name before. Well, it's actually a family name of my wife. And my wife's cousin, who was much, much older, and he's passed away, in 1950, his name was Dale Velzy. You can look it up. Dale Velzy invented the surfboard.
Oh,
so
okay.
They had the big, heavy planks before that, but he's the first one that took a light wood, shaped it, put that fin on it, and sent it. It was Manhattan Beach, California. So this kid's named after his cousin Dale Velzy Monroe Maples.
So he has surfing in his future.
Yeah. I grew up in Fairgrove, but as soon as school was out, I went to the coast. And my wife's from California. So anyway, you can see I got I'm just home to do this interview. I'm headed back to the hospital. He's in NICU right now. He's fine. He's a month early.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about
and
that.
This is I'm associating this with how smart the body is, and just the child. It's our first child, and I'm just mind blown once again about how smart the body is and how it was created. But so they put him in NICU because he was having trouble breathing. It was a C-section. He's a month early. They rip him away from his mom to begin with. He doesn't see his mom. All of a sudden, he's in this new world, and he can't breathe right. So they got tubes in him and all this stuff going on. And then for the first day and a half, they say, you can't hold him because he needs all his tubes. He needs this is what's keeping him breathing. Finally, they said, okay, you get to hold him. So they, pull her gown apart right up here at the top above her bosom, and they place the baby on her chest, and his breathing takes control of itself. First time.
Just so fascinating.
And his respiratory rate and his everything just took control. And when I touched him or talked to him, it would rise. Or when they put him back, it would rise. But as soon as McKenna, the mother, would take him, everything was okay again.
There's so much we don't know that the body knows.
There's so much, but we can't deny. I took a video of his system going back into check, and I'm just like, there are so many ways that were created we haven't even measured yet. So, but the other side of it is the medical staff might have also saved his life. That's actually a reality as well. So I'm not knocking one. I'm just saying when you feel like that your body can't do anything because somebody said it can't, remember the way that like God created it to be so smart on its own. And just get back to the way you were created the best you can. This is the basis of holistic medicine.
Right. Yeah. I
think.
mean, it's the whole mind, body, spirit. I mean, you can't
That's it.
separate one from the other. Yeah.
You cannot separate it, and then you watch it take back control of itself. Anyway, that's the story of my son,
Well, we're
and
glad
just
he's
realizing
doing well, and yeah.
yeah, he's doing
Congratulations.
good. So not to derail us, that was to associate with back to why I would eat those little bit of blueberries and all that, is to let the body know that, like, hey, everything's okay here. We do have food available to us, and I will give it to you. But now we're getting ready to work hard.
Yeah.
And that was the next out.
Well, we had a little glitch again. It comes back. Here we are again. Sorry about that, guys.
I don't know what's going on. Can you see me?
Yeah. Yeah, we're good now. I don't know, just fading in and out.
Yeah, it's like high school math. I just keep getting kicked out. So,
Yeah, I'm glad you're back.
But,
So you're doing the blueberries with the MCT oil to give your body the fuel, get it, and then you would exercise.
yeah, I would put my body into that American Heart, back to the American Heart Association. I'd put it back into that 60 to 80% of my heart rate max.
And then so you were doing a lot, so consistent cardio. So that was part of the piece of what you needed to do to make all this work. And then were you doing any kind of resistance or strength
Sure.
training?
Yeah, sure. So I would. So biking was the best for me because it was the perfect mixture of a great cardiovascular exercise with the resistance using your
Right.
muscles.
You're
When
having-
you're
You're
running,
mountain biking, right? Are you mountain
I would
biking?
mountain bike and road bike.
Okay. Okay.
It was amazing. Somehow
We have a slide with that where it shows your blood sugar, I think. Oh, that's you.
that was at.
Insulin.
I'll just that was
Yeah, let's go
that
back
was
to
the
that.
1 year mark. 1 year mark, no insulin.
Okay.
1 year. So I hadn't had I hadn't had one shot of insulin. I'm a type 1 diabetic. If I eat a pack of sugar, it's going to raise my glucose, and I can't bring it down for 5 days.
Right.
But I don't eat sugar. But anyway, I just say it to say, like, people are like, oh well, your body must be processing the sugars. No, it's not. 1
Oh.
year in, that's so obviously I wasn't eating my musculoskeletal system. I wasn't eating any muscles. I wasn't using protein to
right.
make
to
the
fuel your
glucose.
body.
And I had just go ahead.
Yeah, and you kind of just mentioned this, and we've been talking about it, but I don't know if we've been really clear. But like, your diet during this time period did not consist of any kind of white flour, white sugar. People that eat Cheerios think that's like a low sugar, no sugar food. I'm like, no, that would still be.
It's only sugar free, basically. Yeah.
That's true.
Just because it don't taste sweet doesn't mean it's not sugar.
Right.
But
Right.
if I got one little bit of white flour or processed sugar in my system, it screwed my whole routine up. It didn't work for 5 days. And I could watch it on the glucose monitor. My glucose monitor, you saw how it was smooth on that last slide? My glucose would wig out for 5 days, almost to, and they say it takes 3 to 4 days to just flush it out of your system, basically. So I had to wait for that processed carb to flush out of my system before my body would take back control of itself again.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Doing a lot. I would assume at this point you're doing a lot of cooking of your own, prepping, and it seems like these days you can't eat like that without having to create everything yourself.
That's right. It came and people are like, well, how would you do that? And they came back to the gratitude thing. I didn't focus on what I couldn't have. Ever. It's like,
I love that.
I focused on what I could have and what I did have.
That's
And
wonderful.
that made it easy. It made life easy. Really, just like, start being thankful for what you got and stop worrying about what you don't have. And that helped everything from the endogenous production. I wasn't trying to get more than what I have. And when I did, I would get in trouble. And I would just like eat what I could eat. Great. I ate, and this isn't a battle of eat red meat or be vegetarian or anything. I loved chicken. I loved steak. We found great ways to make it.
And it worked for you. I mean,
and it was great.
Right. Yeah.
There was no, and you say, well, how did, we traveled a lot. How would you eat out? It's so hard to eat out. Not really, because every restaurant's got a burger. And even though like you don't want that kind of fat or that's not what we're talking about here. I can eat a burger and green beans without a bun. And I can enjoy the company I've got here at this dinner. I can eat a chicken salad. I can eat I can.
Yeah. So you found a way. You found a way, and you didn't have any excuses, and you focused on the important
what you
things.
can.
Yeah,
what you can.
I love that. Yeah, yeah. That's so good. We're kind of starting to run out of time, so I wanted to talk about at least one other thing that you said you found to be really important as you were going through this process, and I imagine you're probably still find this to be very important, and that's about keeping your gut clean.
Yeah, digestive health. And I gotta like put this back on where I first started learning. It was the same guy as Dr. Scott Gam.
Yeah, he was kind of your guiding light, wasn't he?
He was my first. Yeah, he was the first. One to really introduce me to like, hey, man, put your body back to where it was created.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then here's the way. Keep your gut clean. Every night, I take a fiber supplement.
Okay.
And when I wake up, like I want those pipes clear.
Yeah. And that's how it's supposed to be. You're not
Yeah.
even, I've read some things where it's kind of like, old time grandma would be like, well, I'm not eating if I haven't cleaned out what was already, from the night before.
My grandpa called it taking it. He wouldn't eat until he took a grunny. So let's go with grunt. I still don't know what a grunny is, but it's a grunny. That was it. I want it. Because I don't want any surprises in my gut. Because your 90% of your absorption of your nutrients happens in the large intestine. I believe those numbers are correct. And there's something to the effect of it.
Yeah, small intestine and then large intestine. But they all need to be clean. Yeah.
So, thanks. It's been like since 2019 since I was like really on this. But if there's like old food, imagine taking like a bunch of food, putting it in a blender, and then just sitting it out on the counter at room temperature for the next few days, and then go back and then drink that. No way. Not doing it. That's what you got happening. You just put that in your gut and you let it sit there. Two problems. One is you're absorbing rotten food. Two, you get a lot of, if I have that sitting in my gut and then I eat something, what I eat is just I don't know what's coming up next. But I always knew that my system was clear, and that you can see us clean on that, that one slide, flat, blueberries, flat.
Right.
There was no surprises floating around in there. Anyway.
Yeah. So that's really good. So you kept the gut clean with like you do a fiber supplement.
There's a lot of other ways, probiotics and I'm sure you guys talk about all that. Everything that you can do for your gut health.
It's fundamental. Yeah. I mean, if you don't have good gut health, you really don't have anything else. It's kind of it's the control center.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So, okay. So let me just kind of recap for our listeners, and then you tell me if I missed anything. So the big things and you currently still do a lot of these things, right? Because you take insulin now, but you just take minimal amounts because lifestyle doesn't always permit you to have this structured of a routine.
Yeah, so they came out with the Omnipod 5, which allows you can control a little bit of just a little bit at a time, and the kind of insulin I take leaves my body in 2 hours. So I shut it off for very long amounts of time to practice keeping the fat going in there, and then I use just very like what a child would use, a very minute amount. Just to allow not the intensity that I went through in 2019 and 20.
Gotcha. Right. Just a little more freedom in your lifestyle. But okay. So like the big things is, we know exercise was really important for you. We know kind of that glucose creation, endogenous versus exogenous glucose creation, the easy burning fuels. So that's where the MCT and that kind of stuff came in. because that's
Yeah.
a nice fuel source for that. That doesn't require
Good healthy fats. Good healthy fats.
good healthy
We can
fat,
go with
yeah.
that. Good healthy
there you go.
fats.
Yeah.
Nonstop good healthy fats.
Yeah, and then keeping the gut clean, and then of course, kind of the spiritual side of that with the faith and the gratitude are also really key components to living a life like the way you do.
That's it. That's the basis of it. Yeah. So,
Okay, so I have to, before we go, I do want to say a big thanks to our sponsors, which is Coloma Tart Cherry Juice and Spring Valley. Coloma is the tart cherry juice of choice for Dr. Shealy, and Spring Valley is our local health food store where you can find anything you need. They're wonderful. They have all of the supplements and all the things to keep your gut clean, so check them out. And Michael, anything else we need to cover before we peace out of here?
weight loss, type 2 diabetes, and aiding in your type 1 diabetes. Everything we just said will help in all that. Focus on burning fats and eating good fats, and the fat burning comes from exercise as recommended, just like the American Heart Association.
Yeah,
but you've got to stay consistent. It's a long game lifestyle.
It is.
Don't get discouraged. Do not get discouraged up front. That's it.
Okay, thank you for that reminder that yes, so many of these things we just talked about apply to everyone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. We may have to meet again because you have a lot of really interesting things to say, but we really appreciate you sharing your story, and we will reconnect soon.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.